Hi guys, Drea from Aloha Plant Life here, and today I want to take you guys through a list of some of the most coveted and popular variegated houseplants that are on the market right now. And unfortunately, all of these feature what is known as unstable variegation, which means that they can, and in many cases will, revert back to their unvariegated forms. And I just think it's important for you guys to know that about these plants because some of these plants are not cheap at all. Now, before we get into the first plant, I do want to let you know that the next video that I will be releasing is going to be a counterpart to this video in which I talk about the alternative types of plants that you can buy that feature stable variegation and are definitely not going to revert back to their original forms for you. So if you have not previously hit that subscribe button or that notification bell, now would be a good time to do so that you can get notified as soon as that video is released. But in the meantime, I'm not going to be going through this list in any kind of particular order other than the fact that I am going to talk about all of the same types of plants. For example, all the monsteras in a group, all the philodendrons in a group, etc., etc. So let's actually go ahead and start with the monstera since variegated monsteras are super popular right now and super pricey. So the hottest one on the market right now is the Monstera albo variegata. This is an absolutely gorgeous plant, I'm not gonna lie. I think they're beautiful, but unfortunately they are super unstable. And lots of times when you go to sites that are selling these plants, you will see titles for some of the plants that they're selling that state, this is a Monstera albo variegata reverted. Reverted means it has lost its variegation. They're still selling it for a premium though. They're selling it for more than my plain green Monstera right here would cost because there is always a very, 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 very minute chance that that variegation could show back up. But once again, even if it shows back up, it's still not a stable form of variegation. It is not going to stick around forever, and it may not even stick around that long. So it's just something you have to be aware of when you're spending that much money for a plant such as a Monstera albo. Now, along those same lines is the Monstera aurea. This one features the same type of variegation. By the way, everything we're talking about today is going to be a form of chimeric variegation. That is the unstable form of variegation that you're going to see in plants. But this type of variegation that you're seeing on the aurea presents itself in a more yellow color versus the white that you see on the Monstera albo. However, still just as unstable. I will say that I find that yellow variegation in plants is a little bit sturdier than white. So from that standpoint, the aurea probably is going to provide you variegation for a longer period than say an albo, but once again, it also depends on the care and the environment, etc., etc. So who's to say? You just never really know, and that's part of the reason I wanted to present this list to you today. Now, another type of Monstera that has a very popular variegated form that is also unstable is the Monstera peru variegata. Now, once again, this is a beautiful plant and it does have that yellowish variegation similar to that aurea we just looked at, but once again, not stable. There's no guarantee for how long that variegation is going to last, and for the dollar amount that a lot of people are asking for this plant, I personally don't think I would do it. But once again, to each their own, no shame to anybody for buying these plants, but just be aware that if you buy this plant, you may not have that variegation for long. Now, yet another very popular form of variegated monsteras right now are the adansonii, and there are different types of variegations for these plants that you can see out there being sold. But once again, they are all highly unstable. They can and will likely revert at some point for you. So that basically covers the majority of the super hot at the moment variegated monsteras that feature unstable variegation. The other big group of plants I feel like where we're seeing just tons of people flocking to the variegated varieties that are highly unstable are philodendrons. So let's start with what is hands down an absolutely gorgeous plant, no lie, but unfortunately does have unstable variegation, and that is the Philodendron burle marx variegata. This plant is beautiful. I love this mix of the green and the yellow. But once again, it is not stable. There is a huge chance that this will revert back to just being a plain green Philodendron burle marx, which is also a beautiful plant. But you can get one of those for much cheaper than you can this variegated form. Now, if you do have the money to get this one and you're cool with being like, well, hey, I had some variegation for a while and now I've just got a beautiful green burle marx, then great. Go out there and get it. And you know, perhaps maybe you have to think about it this way. It's kind of like when you get cut flowers. Cut flowers don't last and you end up throwing them away. This variegation is not going to last forever. It's eventually going to go back to green, but at least you aren't having to throw the plant away like you do with the flowers. So perhaps if you approach it from that standpoint, then you won't be let down. But if you kind of are like, no, I would still be let down, let's move on to some other ones on this list that are potentially going to let you down, including the Philodendron Florida beauty. And it is a beauty. I love the shape of these leaves with these 3 lobes. I love that you get that half moon variegation where half the leaf is like a yellowish color, half of the leaf is green. But unfortunately, that type of variegation is one of the most unstable out of all of them. And once again, you have to be really careful because when these plants start to push out anything that is all yellow, those leaves are not going to be able to sustain themselves. It's just like the all white leaves on the albo. And it would be worth mentioning right now that if the plant goes completely white, as in it was pushing out only all white leaves or only all yellow leaves, the plant itself is not going to be able to survive. It will not be producing anything with chlorophyll at that point. Therefore, it will not be able to synthesize at all, and that will pretty much be game over for that plant. So that is definitely something to be aware of. And you know, along those lines, I will put together a future video for you guys explaining how to help control and maintain variegation in plants with unstable variegation. But right now, let's get back to our philodendrons. So the next philodendron on our list is actually going to be the Variegated Philodendron Billietiae. Once again, a very beautiful plant. There is a gorgeous green version of this plant as well. This reminds me very much of the burle marx that we were looking at in terms of the coloring, but then it does have some of those bigger patches of color in its variegation as well, but highly, highly unstable. So the next philodendron, and actually we might as well just group these 2 together. So the Philodendron White Wizard and the Philodendron White Knight, very similar looking plants, kind of hard to tell the difference sometimes. But once again, we're into this all white, all green variegation that is highly unstable. This is just like with that Monstera albo we looked at the beginning. This does not last. It is really hard to maintain. The white melts very easily on these leaves, and it kind of looks bad when it happens, no lie. So if you guys have ever seen pictures of like white leaves where they look like they're burned on the edges, that's what happens because they can't photosynthesize. So that's the kind of thing you also want to be aware of when you're getting particularly any kind of plant labeled as albo. That just comes with the territory. It's something that's going to happen, so be prepared for that. But similar to the Philodendron White Wizard and White Knight, at least in terms of growth pattern, kind of overall look to the plant, is the ever so popular Philodendron Pink Princess. So sorry if I just burst anybody's bubble who really has been coveting a pink princess by telling you that it is entirely unstable, but it's the truth, and I don't want you to be misled when deciding to buy a pink princess. These plants are crazy unstable. And I think that's a lot of the reason why people are starting to complain. I'm seeing it online and other places about ordering pink princesses and they're coming in with no pink. That is not a good sign. That to me is a sign that that plant has already started to revert, if not fully reverted, before they actually sold it to you. Once again, when buying plants online, always make sure you ask the seller for a current photo of the actual plant that is going to be sent to you. If you're not seeing a lot of pink, don't buy it. If you are seeing a lot of pink, accept the fact that that pink's probably not going to stick around very long after you get it, and if you're fine with that, great. Go ahead and get it. Now, I would like to point out that with the pink princess, when they revert, if I'm being honest with you guys, I really don't think they look pretty when they revert. Unlike some of the other plants we've talked about, like the Monstera albo, that's just going to revert back to looking like this, it's just going to look green. The pink princesses seem to revert in a way that they look green, but then some of the leaves just look brown, and it's really not attractive in my opinion. I mean, I'll see if I can find a picture of one to flash up on screen here for you so you guys know what I'm talking about. But it is just not one of the more attractive plants when it reverts. And so that's why I've never really had one on my plant wish list before. But I understand why other people really, really like them, and pink plants are super hot right now. And I will have a pink alternative for you on the list of plants that have stable variegation that I'll be releasing next week. So that wraps up all the philodendrons that I wanted to talk to you about on this list today. So let's move on to alocasias. And I'm here to tell you right now, you guys, some of the most unstable on the entire list are these alocasias. They just do not last. I don't know if maybe it has to do with the fact that the alocasias grow one leaf from each leaf and nothing else, right? Each leaf only ever produces one new leaf. Makes sense to me that with the way variegation works when it's unstable, that yeah, eventually you're going to get a leaf that has no variegation and it's now only going to produce one other leaf, and odds are that leaf's not going to have any variegation either. So I would be a little bit cautious about how much you spend on variegated alocasias, but once again, they are gorgeous. That's why everybody's attracted to them. You've got the zebrina that is beautiful when it's variegated. The dragon scale looks insane when it's variegated. Like, it's so crazy to me. I don't know. It's crazy. And then you've got the Variegated Alocasia frydek, which you guys know the green version of this plant is on my wish list currently. And I'm not gonna lie, this one is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. But once again, highly unstable. It seems that they will get slightly variegated, then the next leaf will be more variegated, then the next leaf will be more variegated, and then it gets to this point where you're like, it looks gorgeous like this, and then the next leaf comes out completely green again. And from that point, it is very unlikely that you will get any more variegated leaves on a variegated alocasia. So let's move on to another, what I consider to be kind of like an albo type plant, even though it's not really commonly referred to as an albo, and that is a Spathiphyllum Picasso, otherwise known as a Picasso peace lily. And this is absolutely gorgeous with this mixture of broad green leaves, some solid white leaves, some half and half. It's just absolutely gorgeous. But once again, this is white variegation. It is white variegation in a large scale pattern, meaning some leaves are completely white, some are at least half white, and that once again is some of the most unstable variegation that you're gonna find out there. So enjoy it while it lasts. At least it will still look pretty if it reverts all the way back to a green plain Spathiphyllum, aka peace lily. So the next plant I wanna talk about on this list, actually I feel like has one of the fastest reversion rates, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just people aren't getting the care right or the environment right, or if it's just that unstable and that quick to revert. But that is the variegated string of pearls. Most people I know who have had these, I don't think they've had them for more than 6 months before they've reverted back to an all green plain string of pearls. And you guys know I love my string of pearls, and I would love to have a variegated version if it would last. But at the price that most people are asking for this, it's just not worth it to me to have that for 6 months variegated, and then I've just got yet another plain green string of pearls. But once again, to each their own. Let me know if you personally have had one of these and how quickly it reverted for you, or if it's not reverted yet, down in the comments below. And the last group of plants that I want to talk about are Hoyas. And this one's a little bit trickier. I actually really had a hard time finding information on whether the variegation for a lot of Hoyas were stable or not. So I actually kind of turned to you, the viewers, and I went to see what people were saying on social media, Reddit, places like that about their variegated Hoyas, and were they experiencing any kind of reversion on any of them. And it turns out quite a few of you are experiencing reversion on some of your Hoyas. Now, there are Hoyas with known for sure stable variegation, which once again we'll discuss in the next video. But the ones that I was seeing talked about most often that were reverting were the Variegated Hoya Kerrii. And so this is the heart-shaped leaf Hoya, and its variegation pattern, actually, I was kind of shocked that this one is reverting for people, because its patterning would suggest that it actually is slightly more stable, but apparently not. Another one I was coming across a lot where people were talking about it was reverting, like whole vines were going back to green, is the very popular Krimson Queen, which would also lead me to believe that the Krimson Princess, which is very similar to the Krimson Queen, is also unstable variegation and could revert. I also saw multiple people mentioning that their Hoya Lisas were reverting. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm entirely unsurprised by this, because I have also seen plenty of pictures, and I'll see if I can find one to flash up here for you, where the leaves of these plants that I've just mentioned can go completely white. And once again, anytime I see a leaf that can go completely white, it's a red flag in my brain. This is unstable variegation. This plant can and likely will at some point revert. And you guys, there are way more plants out there featuring unstable variegation than we have time to cover today, or in an entire week, or in an entire month, or maybe even in an entire year. But if you have a basic understanding and knowledge of the types of variegation out there, what they look like and how they work, that will help you know when plant shopping whether a variegated plant you're looking at is going to likely be unstable or stable in nature. So if you would like to learn about those different types of variegation, you can check out this video next. Thank you so much for joining me today, you guys, and I look forward to seeing you again next time. Aloha!